Pretty much everything seems harder and more complicated in 2025. Everything feels more expensive, more uncertain, and somehow even more stressful. We're seeing it in both our personal lives and professional spaces with clients, with no clear improvements or resolutions in sight.
This week's episode will cover the state of being a therapist in 2025 and how we are striving to meet this unprecedented moment in history. We discuss the growing use of artificial intelligence as a tool and a replacement, the struggle of growing costs for clinicians and clients alike, and how we can all do our best to survive the growing feelings of burnout and despair through improving our connections and expectations. All this and more on Collect Your Thoughts coming up next. Welcome to Collect Your Thoughts. I'm Sean Millhouse, licensed professional counselor.
I'm Asher Morgan, licensed professional counselor.
How you doing, Asher?
I'm doing okay. I don't work on Mondays, so it's a little bit of a slower day.
Is today Monday?
I think so.
Oh, yes, it is Monday. And I took
Mhm.
today off because I wanted to have a nice long weekend, but now it's a little rainy and overcast out. So it's making my productive inclinations really, really struggle.
Well, sometimes rest is productive.
Now we have a podcast to record.
I mean, fair. But maybe
Unfair.
we'll just have a slower, chiller vibe today.
We'll be like, welcome to Collect Your Thoughts. Anyway, all right. Well, if we sound a little tired, it might be, we had, I think, some busy weekends, but also we are talking about the state of being a therapist in 2025, which,
Yes.
Asher, I know you were the one that we talked about this in different ways, but you had specifically brought it back up as maybe this is something that we could dive into. So, share a little bit about why you wanted to talk about this topic today.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like it's a topic that has kind of come up, maybe not this overtly, among the
Hmm.
six of us in the office, of just kind of what it's like to try to be a therapist right now, what it's like to try to help people navigate, our society and our world.
Hmm.
And then just I've seen it a lot on like TikTok and Instagram too, of other therapists just talking about how heavy it is to try to help be, be that space for our clients while we're also trying to navigate kind of the same hellscape, and just wanted to kind of name it. And
Hmm.
then, you know, when we name things, that takes some of the weight out of it, and then just some support around it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that that's maybe what feels the most, I don't know about the most overwhelming, but definitely a major factor in the overwhelming feeling is there are so many overlapping large event moments happening right now. And I think for most of my work, while, yeah, there's going to be things in the media that we're all watching and thinking about, it usually is a pretty individualized experience what you're going to get from client to client. But increasingly, especially in the last decade, but definitely in the last year,
Mhm.
last, I mean, I can't even put a real number on it because it feels really hard to remember what life felt like before all of the ramifications of so many different subjects were coming to a head at one time.
Mhm.
And we're feeling it too because these are impacting our lives. It's impacting everyone's lives. And so it's really challenging to remember how do we continue this work in a way that is honest while also not being dragged down by it, which I
Mhm.
think is such an important part of why this was a conversation to cover.
Yeah, for sure, because it's I don't know, I feel like I'm gonna talk about this a lot today because it's kind of been what's been sitting on my chest, is like there's an overwhelming sense of gratitude that I have that my clients choose me. Like,
Mm,
because, I always tell them, like, finding a therapist in a weird way is kind of like dating. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not everybody's cup of tea. And like the way I do this may not work for you, and that's okay. And I am pretty upfront with them about that from the start. But then when it does feel like a good fit and they do want to continue to work with me, the like gratitude of getting to be that person in their life and, that can provide that space. And, I'll definitely talk about this here in a little bit, but being maybe the first person that they've told something to. Um, and that can be both joyous and really heavy and traumatic. And we really never know. And I think that's one of the beautiful parts of our job is that,
Yeah.
even the clients that we think we know, like what they're going to come in with, sometimes we'll throw a curveball and like it's both the fun and like one of the pieces I love about it, but also sometimes challenging, especially right now when things feel like they're moving at such a fast rate of speed and we're all
Mhm.
trying to kind of keep up with it and figure out what do I pay attention to? What do I filter out? How much do I consume? How much do I just let kind of float by? And then also just trying to be a human on top of that and like stay connected with our friends or our partner or like our hobbies, pay our bills, check our emails, all the
You even
little
check our
things.
emails? Ugh.
I mean, every now and then. So,
Some of us more than others.
yeah,
Yeah.
we won't get into the notifications bubble.
No, that in itself is a whole episode. I wanna hear from you when it comes to naming how heavy things are right now.
Mhm.
What does that specifically mean to you?
I mean, I think just saying that, like, I absolutely love this job, and it's kind of I don't wanna say late in life, but I am 44, so it's kind of like I mean, I took a hard right turn. I spent 11 years working in higher education and then am relatively new therapist. Like, I've been doing it for a few years, but have only had my, like, LPC, like, my terminal license since March, and so I'm kind of relatively new to some pieces of this.
Mhm.
But just calling it out and the weight of it, and I mean, even before all of this, like, I know people who started a private practice during COVID and, like, have talked to me about, like, how hard that was to get that up and going because everything was virtual, and they're like, "This doesn't even compare to that." And I think when we name things, though, it takes a little bit of the weight out of it because it either allows the other person to kind of agree and validate.
Yeah.
Maybe they're experiencing it too, or it opens up space to like get support. And I feel like our society has gotten away from that a little bit of like this sense of I have to be able to do it all on my own. And if I can't, that's like shameful. When in reality, we were never meant to do that. We were very much like communal beings
Yeah.
and this kind of sense that like, oh, I have to know everything, I have to have it all together is just not the case. And so I think calling it out and being like, hey, it's really hard right now opens up that space to be like, hey, Sean, you said it's really hard right now. What do you need? Like, what do you need that I can provide? Sometimes I add
Mhm.
that little caveat that I can provide because you may need something that I can't provide, but I may know someone or a resource that can.
Yeah.
And I think it's that. What does it feel like to you to name these things?
It's overwhelming. It is it's saying what is very apparently there, but I think from having done this work from beginning in the late aughts into, the early tens was when I first began this work. It really is so different in terms of how much more open I think we are about the larger community-wide, national-wide, nationwide, global-wide, whatever, words are hard.
Is it on your
Um,
side?
yes, always or is not. Um, and and so I think because of that, like, there isn't as much of a place to escape what is happening in the world because it's finding us also with other clients. Other
Mhm,
clients are saying things that echo our experiences.
mhm,
And while that has always been the truth, there's more and more overlap, I think, in the work that it is more and more not only we have these shared experiences, but also we are in the same boat of not necessarily having a clear answer for
mhm,
how to get through it. And that is a really hard thing to sit with. While there's a lot of things that have never ever been here's a quick equation for how to get through it. It feels even more like a giant question mark, and that in itself is hard when sometimes you wanna give your clients anything to grab onto, and when it doesn't feel like there is anything clear to grab onto, it's sort of like, "Okay, if we imagine we were grabbing onto something, what would that feel like for us?" And I don't necessarily always feel great about that because I want people to have something more tangible.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that, and I've been kinda sitting with recently is, like, for some of mine, I'm the thing that they're grabbing onto,
That's a great way of putting it.
but then it's like, what am I grabbing onto? Then part of my work then becomes, what do I have to hold on to so that we both don't go down? How am I taking care of myself? How am I doing the things that I tell them to do. Like,
Yeah.
am I using my support system? Am I practicing gratitude? Am I, for me, going outside, moving in some way, my like body, whether it's, just going outside and maybe mowing the yard or walking the dog or, you know, just something minor all the way up to like a hike or a workout, bike ride, something like that. So that when they do kind of tether to me as that grounding force that I'm also grounded, because I think that helps me feel like I'm not doing harm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I really like that. I like the idea of we're all sort of using each other, and I mean that in the most non-threatening way to get through this, which is sort of the whole point, right? Of what you're talking about with community is that we do have to hold on to each other to get through these large scale events.
yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I feel like that's been one of my biggest talking points the past, year almost, is who are your people? Like, even
Yeah.
if it's just 1 to 2, like, community doesn't necessarily have to be large. For some people it is, but for some
Yeah.
people they don't want that or don't have access to it for whatever reason. So it's like, who are your people, like, right now? And that can be, 15 to 20 people for some, and maybe for others it's just like 1 or 2.
Mhm.
Like, and then I think I'd also be remiss if I didn't say, like, right now, this is also what we're dealing with is one of the times where it really highlights the need for therapists to have therapists.
Mhm.
And kind of, we never know who the like ultimate, like at the top of the pyramid therapist is, but it's like, I
Yeah.
know mine has a therapist
Yeah.
and like, and it just kind of keeps going, but kind of highlighting the importance. And then also just owning that, like, we need that support too, and that we're not infallible,
We're not?
unfortunately.
Oh, I guess all
Unfortunately,
those
no.
times I've been telling my clients I'm infallible have been false.
Mm,
Do you think I
fake
should
news.
prepare for legal action? Just
Yes.
kidding.
You might contact your insurance provider. Mm,
Hi, I've
they
been telling everybody that I'm infallible. Is that a problem?
Mhm.
Um, no.
They need to talk to you about your extended warranty on your bullshit.
There's a lot of it.
Mhm,
All right, so let's get into some facts around this topic. And I wanted to first start off with what you have said this numerous times in different conversations you and I have had, and that is therapy is inherently political. So
mhm.
tell me more about what that means.
I mean, especially with our society that we live in, like, all of these systems that both help or harm us are inherently political. Like, just thinking
Mhm.
about where we are right now, and it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you fall on,
Yeah.
like, pretty much everything in our society right now is political, and it has kind of been set up that way, and it's exhausting, but it's like thinking about, the populations that I work with sometimes are having legislation proposed and passed around things that they can do, things that they can't do, what they have access to, what they don't. Um, and bodily autonomy. Like, will we be able to go to the doctor and actually advocate for what's going on? And that's regardless of sex and gender, and then
Mhm.
we can get into the different layers of like race and class around that. But it's like everything, I mean, we're we're staring down the barrel of by Saturday, most states, I know Arkansas is one of them, are no longer going to be able to fund SNAP benefits. And so it's like, how are people going to eat? And, I know we have a really tiny food pantry in the office, and
Mhm.
I've been working with some other people about like how can we support our food banks and mutual aid and things like that. But they bring those issues into the therapy space. They bring just a handful of the topics that kind of come through my office are related to like food and being able to pay my bills. How am I going to eat? How am I going to pay my rent or my mortgage? I'm not happy with in my like relationship, but we live together, and if we don't live together, I'm not sure I can afford to pay my bills. And and then it gets even murkier if kids are involved,
Yeah.
and we're also kind of staring down, insurance rates potentially going like through the roof. And then what does that mean both for like our clients, but also what does that mean for us? Because that's how we pay our bills, just because it's the system that we live in. It's just like so many things that come into the therapy space can be taken back to some aspect of our current political system. And you can't deny that. And it
Mhm.
leads to like a big chunk of anxiety, depression, especially, the population that I predominantly work with, like there are really high rates of depression and anxiety because of legislation, fear of politics and fear of, just am I going to have certain rights? Is medical care going to get taken away? Am I going to even be able to go to the bathroom? And it just we never know kind of what's gonna come in, but then it also makes it really, really hard because you can only provide so many coping skills for someone that's like, grounding techniques aren't gonna make their paycheck bigger,
Right.
or if they're working for the federal government right now, grounding techniques aren't gonna help them pay their mortgage if they don't get a paycheck, this coming week. And
Yes.
those things are inherently political, and we help carry that. And one of the things that I say, not super regularly, but I have said it, is like your anxiety is actually a very normal and natural reaction to what you're experiencing.
Mhm.
Like, there's nothing wrong with you, like, because anxiety is fear based. And like, if you're not sure how you're going to pay your bills, how you're going to feed your kids, you know, if you're going to lose your job, if you need to leave the state or the country, like, those things induce fear. And that comes from anxiety because that anxiety is trying to protect you. And like, there's only so many coping skills you can give for that before it's just
Yeah.
validating that like, hey, you're actually having a really normal reaction to this. I would be more concerned if you didn't feel anxious. Like if you weren't
Yeah.
concerned with what you're dealing with as opposed to the fact that you are. um and so what are
Yeah,
some of the
it's
ways that you feel like this shows up in your office, in your space?
for sure. I mean, like, I think, going back to our girl Brene, is that in her most, like, one of her most recent interviews, she talked about how she doesn't trust anybody that feels settled right now. I definitely think about how the cost of living has exploded this year.
Hmm.
And of course, that has been something that even before the current administration came into office, that was one of my biggest fears about it, about them being elected in was, I mean, let's just that on the biggest, most for sure seen signs of bad things. I mean, there's too many to count. But when it came to what I knew would eventually trickle down to my daily life would be how cost of living is going to be impacted by tariffs and about how jobs and the like potential recession indicators would pop up because of different types of just legislation that goes through or policies that they implement or whatever. So of course that means less people keep appointments, less
Hmm.
people are reaching out for appointments, and it's not because they're any less sick, it's because they are having to choose between, do I pay for so and so's medication or groceries, or do I pay for my copay to go see my therapist?
Right.
And that has then led to this increase in people using AI. Of course, that was going to happen anyway, but now it's increasingly being used as a mental health tool For example, medicalnews.org suggests that about 30% of Americans have considered using AI powered therapy tools.
Mhm.
And that isn't surprising me with how often people have in the past, we're using TikTok and YouTube for different takes on things. But now it's becoming this thing where people are assuming that it can replace what we do. And while there are definitely things that AI can provide, it absolutely does not make up for the true human experience that we provide. And I really do believe that, as much as that might sound like I'm being like, no, our profession cannot be disrupted by the robots. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously it can be, but I don't think that a person is going to get the same impact from words on a screen that are being filtered to that person as opposed to who we are in our professional work and what human connection can do. But also, we're having to think about how we utilize AI too, in terms of how can we save time? How can we save money using certain things that are going to make things more streamlined and also improve the timing of our services and what it takes to make sure that we're in compliance. So I mean,
Mhm.
those are definitely things that I'm thinking about a lot too. Is just how all these things are a domino effect that are rolling massively fast down a hill full speed at us. And we're like,
Yeah.
oh God, here we go. That's
Yeah,
my
and
head on that.
AI definitely brings up a lot of, I don't know, mixed feelings. The two big things that stand out to me whenever I have clients talk about, "Hey, I actually talked to Chat GPT about this," or whichever AI platform they're using is, and one of them has even said this before, of just, like, they're a little bit too affirming.
Yeah.
Like, they always come back with, like, the positively affirming response, like, and I think one of the things for me is, like, I challenge a lot. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm confrontational, but it's sometimes, 'cause, I mean, sometimes that's therapeutic of, like, sometimes you
Oh
gotta just
yeah.
call out the bullshit when you see it, and, like, an AI bot's not gonna do that, and sometimes
Mm.
a lot of that for me comes in seeing an incongruence in, like, body language and facial expressions, or maybe they start fidgeting when they say something, and it just doesn't match up with the words
Mhm.
coming out of their mouth, and, like, an AI bot can't see that,
Yep.
can't, and even if it could, I'm not sure it would have the intuitive skills to be like, "Hey, those 2, like, the words coming out of your mouth and the tone that you used aren't matching the fact that, like, you're not making eye contact with me anymore, or now you're,
Yeah.
like, bouncing your leg,
Yeah.
like, or picking at your fingers, like," and don't necessarily directly call out those behaviors, but sometimes of
For
just,
sure.
like, you know, if your shaking foot could talk to me, what would it say? I don't remember, I think it's, like, Gestalt or something, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but it's just like, "Hey, there seems to be your body seems to be having a reaction to what you just said, like, what's actually
Mhm.
going on?"
Mhm.
Um, but then also, I mean, I know I get emails and ads all the time through my medical record that I use of, like, "You can try out this AI bot to help you write your notes," and, I haven't done it, but it's like, it's there. I don't know, I think it scares me because I see it in an education setting. I see, like, a hyper reliance on it
Yeah.
of, like, using it to write papers and, do their homework, but even just, like, basic life tasks.
Yeah.
And so it's, like, kind of chipping away at our critical thinking skills when we already have enough ways to do that. Um, so
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's
It'll be
really
really
tricky.
interesting to see where it goes.
Yeah, because there's increasingly a whole generation of people that don't know life without it.
Mhm.
And I think that's something I feel very grateful for, is knowing that I went 30 plus years without there being something like that. And with having to learn how to use tools versus the tool just like basically saying anything I can imagine thinking of here is my question, and then it pops something out, versus I have to imagine there may not be a good use of this technology, or as well, or as, let me say, as positive of a use of this technology, because I don't know if the depth of the questions that are being asked are even as effective as they could be if they had already done decades of work using their creative thinking skills or
Mhm.
doing insight work, which
Right.
really can't be taught without participating in situations that elicit that as
Mhm.
a response.
Yeah, I agree. Um, I mean, and I will say though, like you mentioned TikTok, and I feel like I have gotten a lot of good out of TikTok even before I became a therapist. As someone that was diagnosed with ADHD during the pandemic, and it made so many things make sense, and medication was like life changing. I don't know how I functioned and did things before it in certain scenarios. And I didn't use it as a therapeutic tool, but it was just other people talking about their experience, and it
Hmm.
mirrored my experience, and it just was like, "Oh, I'm not alone." And, like, I'm not the only one in the world that experiences X, Y, and Z. And that was honestly, like, one of the things that made me suggest this topic for today's
Mm,
podcast is that I've seen a lot of other therapists that do use those platforms talking about just, like, it's so hard to be a therapist right now because of some of the things that we've already mentioned of, like, we're trying to figure it out too. Like, we're
yeah,
navigating all of these systems and this, like, landscape and, how are things gonna impact us financially as, like I mean, I think I bought, like, 7 things from the grocery store earlier today, and it was, like, $54. And, like, you know, and it wasn't anything big. Like, it wasn't like dog food or cat food this time, and still it was that, and thinking about that, like, that
hmm,
may be someone's, like, entire grocery budget for the week, and,
yeah.
and I mean, there were things that I needed, but it's just we're faced with that, and I feel like those areas give us spaces where we can feel not so alone, but I also believe that they're not a replacement for
They can't be.
what we do, like. And I think that's kind of the rub with social media is, like, it can help create community, and it can kinda show that we're not the only ones experiencing things, but then at the same time, not always able to provide that actual human interaction.
Yeah.
I will say that, like, one of my favorite ones, though, kind of along this same topic is, like, she posted a video not that long ago of, like, the gratitude as well as the weight of sometimes being our clients first.
Mm,
And sometimes those firsts are, like, happy and joyous and celebratory, and sometimes they're heavy and traumatic, or I'm thinking about getting a divorce, and I don't know how to tell my partner, and we have kids, and, like, or I just lost my job, and I don't know how we're gonna pay our bills. I don't know how I'm gonna be able to keep coming to therapy. I don't know, like, all of those things, and it's, like, one of the things that I have to challenge with my clients sometimes is that they can only talk about the things that are going wrong.
mm,
And I'm like, if things are going good for you, let's talk about it. Let's let's fucking celebrate, like, because we
yeah,
need some good right now. Like, I can provide, praise just as much as I can, like, empathy and validation. And we can celebrate the fact that, maybe you got a new job, maybe you started dating someone that you're really into, maybe you sold a piece of artwork. Like, it could literally be anything.
yeah.
And but I have so much gratitude, and sometimes I even tell my clients, like, "Thank you for choosing, like, me to be the person that walks through this with you," and that I do have an immense amount of gratitude. But I also think this is one of the things that I've found, like, that outside of the therapist community, people don't realize that we carry those heavy things home with us, even
Mm,
as much as we try not to. Like, I find myself all the time, like, I'll be thinking about a client, and I'm just like, "How can I help address this next session?" And, like, it doesn't just end when the hour's over.
mhm.
We're also trying to figure out how to navigate the same things they are. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like gratitude and heaviness is kind of my, like, yin and yang today.
What a wonderful yin yang to have.
Thank you.
So, in talking about this topic really shows up for us in our work. I was curious about how are you taking care of yourself as a therapist? Because just like any job, I think we have to think about like, with surgeons, they have to make sure that their hands are good and steady and they're getting enough sleep and they're on top of surgical procedural maneuvers and things like that. And same for, I think there's always a minimum that is needed for people to do good work at any job. In our work, we're dealing with people and emotions, which can be very unknowable. You don't know what's going to walk into the room until it walks into the room, including
Mhm.
yourself sometimes.
Yep.
So, how are you taking care of yourself as a therapist?
I mean, always and am an advocate for therapists having a therapist. I am actually kind of undergoing a therapist transition where I've just started with a new therapist because I felt like I needed a new modality. And so like just started EMDR to kind of work through some personal and professional stuff. And that's been a whole nother level of weight because the processing with that has been, even though I've only done one actual EMDR session, the processing with that has been so much more heavy than it was just with talk therapy. And I'm a huge advocate for talk therapy, and that therapist was phenomenal. But it was like I just kind of hit my limit where I plateaued and wanted to
Yeah.
try something new. I'm always immensely thankful for the collective and the other 5 of you in the office. And the relationships that I have because it's a little bit different with each one of you, and I get different types of support from each one of you, and I think that's one of the beautiful, beautiful things about the setup that we have
Yeah.
is that we don't all have to be perfect at everything. And it's like I know that I can go to you for certain things or Elise or Jason and like and most of the time y'all are willing and have the space to provide that, but also really good at communicating like, hey, I'm kind of down to let's just sit in this shit together and you at least don't have to be alone with it. But I mean, other things are, sleep is always kind of an interesting monster for me
Yeah.
and always has been. But am I drinking enough water? Have I gotten any outside time? Am I actually like reading and journaling more than I'm consuming social media? Is really important for me. And how am I using my community? How am I giving back to my community? The last episode that I was on, I talked about that NWA Transcends task force that I'm a part of. And like, that's really important to me of like, outside of the therapy space, how am I also contributing to my community? Because that helps fill my bucket. But really just leaning on my friends and being outside are the 2 biggest things for me, which is, we're coming into kind of it's dark by 4:30 time of the year, unfortunately, which isn't helpful, but just finding ways to do that. What about you? How do you take care of yourself as a therapist?
I definitely know when to listen to my body when it comes to if I really want to be comforted, what does it look like? What are comforts that are actually comforting me and not just bubble wrapping me, so to speak? I think there's importance in knowing how certain comforts can maybe keep us from thinking about things. And then there's also some comforts that allow us to move through our emotions. And I think it's a fine line of being able to practice doing both, but with a real thoughtfulness to make sure there's enough balance so that I'm not just doing things that are rotting my brain, but I'm
Mm,
also not doing things that are pulverizing every single horrible headline that's going on in the world into my mind.
mhm,
And I'm becoming much more intentional, strategic, maybe about what and how much news and media I'm consuming because I definitely can tell when it becomes the focal point where there's that part of me that wants to know what's happening now all the time. I definitely can get really overwhelmed by
mhm,
that. But also, I think yeah, like you said, reaching out to my friends and hearing what they have to say. And also making sure not to only talk about the work. I think that's even in our
Mhm.
collective. I think it's important. Like, I know there will be times where I'm like, can we not talk about something about therapy? Can we not talk about
Mhm.
something that's about like mental health and people? Which is
Mhm.
really, it can narrow things down because usually anything could get connected to mental health and people, right? But there's a different level of seriousness and pathology that I think can be put to the side, and you kinda have to, because if you
Mhm.
don't, it will just be around all the time, you
Yeah, I
know?
mean, one of the things that I love is, like, when we're in those spaces is that we kind of collectively all have really different, like, music, TV, book tastes,
Mhm.
and we'll talk about that of,
Yeah.
like, "What have you been listening to lately? What have tell me about the last, like, book that you read." Things like that, and those things can veer off into the political depending on what the books or, things are, but more often than not, I know for me personally, because I don't watch a ton of TV that's new TV, it's like I kinda find something that feels good, and then I just watch it repeatedly.
Yeah.
And so to hear y'all talk about that, especially this time of year where we're getting closer to like, we're gonna be spending more time inside, but then it gives us something to kinda talk about and laugh about or whatever that's not therapy related.
Yeah.
Because I think it can become all consuming
Yeah.
because but I think it's that way because we care,
Oh,
like,
for sure.
and it
Yeah.
matters to us
Yeah.
or hopefully we wouldn't be doing this if it didn't, but,
Mhm.
but I do find myself having to be, like, hyper aware of, like, it's okay to read something that's, like, just silly and fiction related,
Yeah.
like, you don't have to read the, like, latest book on trauma, like, after you've spent, 6 to 7, 8 sessions listening to it,
Right.
um, so,
Well,
yeah.
I think too what makes it even more tricky is that with time and age, I definitely know this is not a brand new thought to say out loud, but I'm definitely seeing more and more of a lot of ideas are just old ideas repackaged.
Mhm,
And so as much as you can try to be on top of the next big theoretical approach or study or hot commodity in therapy, there's a lot of times where it's really not brand
mhm,
new, it's just how somebody's talking about it is, and it's really important not to feel like you have to constantly hover above each and every opinion that's out there about how we do
mhm,
therapy because some of it's really great and unique and nurturing, and other times it can be very niche or not really accessible for a lot of people because of various costs or the type of training needed or whatever. So, yeah, I definitely think it's super important to not let that be your whole life. But at the same time, you want to be good at what you do.
mhm.
So, finding that
We're all about
line.
that balance.
Balance. What concerns you most about the state of therapy right now?
I think it's twofold for me, I think it is and they're actually maybe more related now that I've said that.
Mhm.
Like, I think the financial aspect of it, mostly for our clients, of like, with the upcoming, changes that we're starting to hear about, like how
Mhm.
bad insurance is going to be next year, of will people be able to afford it? And
Yeah.
unfortunately, living in a capitalistic society, that impacts us because it's like,
Yep.
how much will I be able to work with you? Because, like, this is something I don't talk about it a whole lot, and I do feel really privileged in my ability to do this, and I do feel like it balances, but not everybody either can or wants to do it this way, is like, I do my, like, sliding scale is pay me what you can,
Mm.
and, like, and I when I was in LAC, not able to take insurance, I took some flack for that, like, people pushed back against it, but I felt like it balanced out really well with the people that were able to pay, like, the full fee that I was asking and charging
Mhm.
for my time, and I think I'm concerned about that, and that blends into more people trending towards AI. I think just because if things actually play out the way that they're being, projected to, things are gonna get more difficult than they already are.
Mhm.
Like, money's gonna get tighter than it already is. Um and then also just people leaving, feeling like I have to leave the state, I have to leave the country, and all of those things kind of overlap. You kind of are hard pressed to have like a, I don't want to say important, but like a difficult or heavy conversation with me without intersectionality somehow coming up. It's just one of those things, but it's like all of those things overlap. And I think
Yeah.
for me, it's access, because I feel like we've just now gotten to a point where people understand and are starting to accept the importance of mental health care.
Mhm.
And access is already, there are a lot of problematic issues with it.
For sure.
And I think that's my biggest concern, is that access to the care and the services that we provide is going to get more difficult, and that more barriers are going to go up for people. And then that's going to ripple out to like potentially increases in crime, or people being imprisoned, or, you know, involuntarily committed because they're having mental health issues, but they can't afford to access the care until the state steps in. And that's really scary to me.
Super
Um,
scary. Yeah.
so what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I that just made me think of, according to PR Newswire, a recent US-based survey found that 83% of Americans say today's economic climate, which includes inflation, layoffs, cost of living, is taking a toll on their mental health. And yeah, include my own. I know I'm frequently talking about how much more expensive everything feels. And so
Mhm.
if you have new bills that you're paying, whether maybe it's a new car or if you're changing your housing's, always going up and up and and our take home pay hasn't really budged.
Mm-mm.
It's really remained very stagnant. So we're living in a time where there's such a great difference between the growth of cost versus the growth of affordability.
Mhm.
And
Well, and I mean,
that
I know people that I've known it in my personal life, and then also professionally across different, fields that I've worked in. It's like when you get a cost of living raise, it's like praised and celebrated by maybe your employer, but then it's like, oh, because my insurance went up, I'm actually bringing home less money than I did last year. So I didn't
yeah,
actually get a raise, because like I'm getting more money, but the things that come out of my check are also more expensive.
yeah,
And I think like that's really hard to reckon with, of like I didn't actually get a raise.
yeah.
Um and it's just hard. And then the house, I mean, housing everywhere is ridiculous, but I mean, Northwest Arkansas, I think the median home price if you were to try to buy a house in Bentonville is like $500,000.
That's
Like it's,
insane.
yeah. And so how are that's so prohibitive, like most people can't afford that.
Oh
So
god, no. I mean, well,
um
it's also ruining what I think a lot of people feel is Bentonville was at one point had some small town vibes
mhm,
to it that have pretty much been wiped out and constructed
yeah,
over.
obliterated.
And yeah, and so there's a lot of people who are born and raised here who cannot live here anymore because they've been out because they out moneyed. They just they're not able to afford it. They're just not able to afford it. And that's
It's sad. I mean,
it's yeah,
it's a lot of feelings words for
a lot of
me.
feelings
Like
for it.
it's really sad, it's infuriating,
And it's happening
disappointing.
everywhere. It's definitely
Yeah.
not just a Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas thing. It's everywhere. I don't think there's anywhere you can find where things have remained flat or getting cheaper. Like,
Well, and if they are
um,
getting cheaper, then you have to look at other, like,
why?
why? Like,
Yeah,
what's going on here?
usually isn't for a
So,
good reason.
right.
How do you find gratitude in your daily life to do this work? And that's not only through, what you do personally, but also professionally, because after you've been doing it a while, I know I've had my ebbs and flows in terms of having more or less gratitude for what I get to do professionally. But as somebody who is relatively newer to this and you're working in such an unprecedented time, How do you do that? How do you find that gratitude?
For me, I find it in, like, my relationships with other people, whether it's the ones that I'm, like, cultivating with my clients professionally,
Mhm.
but then also with my friends, both but my friends that are both therapists and not therapists.
Yeah.
Like, my best friend in the world is not a therapist, and so it's like we'll talk about stuff and plan trips and just kind of check in. I will admit, like, some days it's more difficult than others. I am somebody that's kind of prone to burnout if I'm not doing a good job of, like, the first question of how you take care of yourself.
Mhm.
I get kinda, like, burned out and grumpy or than normal,
Mhm.
but sometimes I have to be, like, really intentional about it to the point of, like, setting an alarm in my phone, and it's like, "Alright, you're gonna sit down and you're gonna journal and reflect." And one thing that I started as a practice, and I don't remember now where it began, because it started when I was at U of A and was teaching one of my classes, and I had them keep a gratitude journal. And it was, like, 3 times a week, they had to write down, like, 1 sentence of something that went well that day,
Mm.
but taking it a step further than that, something that went well because of them.
That's great.
Like, and so it was like, whether it was something that you did for yourself or for someone else or one thing, because, even if you're having the shittiest day, if you actually sit down and think about it, there's one thing that went
Mhm.
well. Like
Mhm.
somebody gave you a hug, and one of your pets did something cute, and maybe you hit a green light in traffic, like, and I think that's the thing about gratitude sometimes is that we blow it up and it has to be these, like, big overt things, but sometimes it's more those, like, micro things of, like, "I was having a really shitty day today and my toddler gave me, like, the biggest hug unprompted," or,
Yeah.
like, "My dog brought me a toy and wanted to play," and things like that. I think we get so mired down with, like, it has to be, like, these big grandiose things, but sometimes it's the joy and the gratitude in the mundane of the day to day.
Yeah.
I think I took kind of an approach one time when I was burned out of, like, if I just show up, good things will happen.
Mm.
Because for me, like, I tend to try to wanna, like, pull back and isolate when things feel, like, really overwhelming.
Mhm.
And so it's like, if I just show up, for my clients, for my colleagues, for my students, like, something good will happen. It might not
Yeah.
all be good, but something good will happen.
Yeah.
Um,
I love that.
so
Yeah.
so yeah, it's kind of been like a mantra that I have from time to time when I wanna just shut the world out.
Yeah. Because, yeah, then you're just alone with you and your thoughts, and
It's never a good thing.
because usually the reason you're alone with your thoughts in the first place is not because you're just so happy with them. It's usually
No.
thinking like, "Maybe I can protect it from exploding over everything and
Mhm.
everyone else," when really we're just, yeah, kind of repoisoning ourselves over and over again.
Mhm. Yeah. So what does your gratitude practice look like?
Definitely a lot of it, to me, it's most important to find it in the small things, because I think if we look for it only in the big stuff, then we're really gonna be disappointed, because I think
Mhm.
in most of the time they're all around us if we can look in the small things, such
Mhm.
as I am really grateful, like, for I love the fact that we're finally in fall weather. Like, this has been something I have been hoping for, praying for a long time, and I do every year. And so just knowing I am at least saving money, not only on my electric bill, but also I'm getting to enjoy layering my hoodies and sweatshirts, and being able
Mhm.
to maybe have the windows down in my car every now and then or whatever. I love the smell of fresh air and a little breeze and things like that. So anytime I feel like I'm able to tolerate things a little bit easier, which cooler weather definitely tends to help me do that, I can definitely find gratitude in that. But then also even the days where I am feeling overwhelmed about the state of the world and how am I going to show up for people, I think there is something really important about remembering what you talked about earlier, which is being that person's place to do this, is something that I definitely try not to take lightly, and definitely try not to take for granted. But sometimes it really is easy to forget, oh yeah, like I might be that person's safe space. And if I don't show up for work today because I'm feeling grouchy, then I'm probably gonna feel even worse if I don't show up for these people, but there is that fine line, right? Like,
Mhm,
sometimes you really do have to just say, "I am no good for anyone no matter how hard I push myself to go to work," and then there's other days where you go, "No, just be a little tougher on yourself, you can do this, you're being maybe a little extra sensitive," and then you just see how it goes, but
mhm.
it really is every day is a new day and no system is perfectly going to work every time, and that's okay.
Well, and I think that's really important, and that's something that I was taught, like, maybe when I was in internship, and I don't remember which one of you it was, but it was just, like, you know what I mean, towards the end of internship, my personal life kind of imploded, and it was like, if you don't have it today, sometimes the best thing you can do is to reschedule
Yeah.
and to intentionally go and then take care of yourself so that the next day you can show up instead of, like, trying to, force it and then maybe checking out during session and
Yeah.
not being able to be fully present. But it is a fine line of, like, I would never actually say this about anyone, but it's like, am I being a little bitch today? Or
Right.
like, or do I truly need to
Yeah,
take some space?
and deciding when
Especially
that's
because,
appropriate.
like, things are so heavy but it really is, sometimes a coin flip
Mhm.
day to day of, like, of that mantra of, like, just show up and it'll be okay versus, like, no, I'm really am not okay and need to go do the things on my self-care list.
And
Um,
sometimes it happens that you go to work, you try to do the right thing, quote unquote, and you realize, nope, I do need to go home. I do
mhm,
need to say no more today because
yep,
I was checked out for that first session. And of course that then you feel many things about because
mhm,
these are people coming to you for your expertise.
mhm,
And if you're not fully checked in for them, then it feels icky and it feels gross. Even if you are trying your hardest, sometimes that just doesn't feel like enough or worth the cost.
mhm.
So
Well,
maybe we should get into our takeaways for
yeah,
our listeners. So I think the first one that really came to me that always like to make sure that is known is that we may not have the answers, but we can absolutely sit with discomfort of not having the answers right now. And that can feel frustrating for even us as therapists who know this and practice this, that we aren't always going to have the answers, especially when we have clients that are going through things where they want comfort, they want certainty, they want something that isn't a big question mark. And sometimes that is part of our work is saying, I'm so sorry, but this is it. Like
mhm,
where we're at in this story, we can't read the book further along. We can't fast forward to the next episode. We're just there. We are live.
mhm.
And that's all we can do is just sit in this and maybe do the least amount of harm that we can with that.
Yeah. And I mean, I have even gone so far as to tell my clients that because for some of them, some of the things that they're dealing with, I'm like, if I could give you a checklist and be like, if you just leave my office and go do X, Y, and Z, everything would be better. I would do that
Hmm.
in a heartbeat. And I was
Hmm.
like, but unfortunately, I can't. And
Yeah.
then, I mean, I don't know if we've talked about my Ted Lasso obsession on this podcast, but it's
You've
there and it
alluded to it,
exists.
maybe.
But also along that vein of, like, there's one episode where Ted says, there's something worse than just being sad, and that's being sad and alone.
Hmm.
And, I've told some of them, like, you don't have to be alone for the next hour. Like, I can't fix it. I can't take it away. I don't have, like, anything, like, deep, insightful, like, that you can go and do. I was like, but you don't
Hmm.
have to sit alone with it
Yeah.
for the next hour. And, like, we can talk about whatever you want to do, whatever you want to,
Hmm.
heavy or not. But for the next hour, you're not alone. And sometimes that's all we can do is provide that space.
Yeah. Not
So,
easy, but it's what we can do.
and I mean, I think along that kind of same vein is finding your spaces. where you can do that. And like, so getting involved, I've talked about that probably before, with something that matters to you.
Mhm.
And that sometimes we have to create that space. And it's not always face to face. Like sometimes it's joining a Discord server, that's mutual aid related and just throwing out, resources that you know about, or there are Facebook groups also about those types of things of like, hey, so and so needs this. The way that I hate to use the word survive, but that's kind of how it feels right now, of survive this, is like kind of getting away from that individualism that we've been sold
Mhm.
as the key, and getting back to like collective and community, and like, you may not have this thing, but I do, and I'll gladly share it with you,
Yeah.
because I also know that like it'll come back around. And it's like, it's a notion that I always carry in like my friendships of like, oh hey, I got you this time because sometime down the line you'll have me.
Yep.
But I feel like we don't always do that in day to day. Like we have expectations of like, oh, if I do this thing, you're gonna like reciprocate immediately
Mhm.
or pay me for it or whatever. As opposed to like, we're just helping each other out because we're all trying to survive this same shitstorm. But just the things that you like, and I mean, this is one of the beautiful things about Northwest Arkansas, is that there's a group or an interest like activity for just about anything that you may like want to get involved in. And like, and if it hasn't already been created, like I've seen things just blow up on Facebook and Instagram because people are like, oh my god, I was hoping for a group like this. And
That's
yeah, just
important.
find in your place.
Yeah. Yeah. And keep looking, because and
Hmm.
like you said too, if it isn't out there yet, then maybe you're the one that needs to make it come true. I think another thing that's important, which this is not just for therapists, this is for most of us out there. I think we need to just remember that if you have a therapist, remember that your therapist is doing the best they can too, just like you.
Hmm.
And that also means we're continuing to strive to do better for our clients, and that sometimes maybe that means that could mean they're not maybe as smiley or as upbeat as you would like to see
Hmm.
them, but that is their way of being able to show up for you, is to be able to say, I'm going to preserve as much emotional ability with you in a way that is gonna be most effective. And just because I may not be like, "Oh, everything's great and flowers and rainbows and sunshine," that means I can't do my job as well, but also to remember we're human. Like,
Hmm.
I think that's same with doctors, nurses, teachers, oof, anybody working with people, especially nonstop, there is just going to need to be some patience, but also not to the point of being outright disrespected. I think that
Hmm.
there's always that line of, sure, people are going to need room for grace, but also dignity should always be considered no matter what we do.
Right.
And we just hope that people would slow down enough to know everyone's trying, I think, for the
Yeah.
most part, to do their best.
I've also had to set some boundaries with some of mine because I mean, I'm not like a super bubbly person to begin with, which is shocking. But like, a few of mine are really intuitive and they're like, are you okay?
Hmm.
And I feel like that's put me in a position to like be honest or not. And usually the way I navigate that is like, you know what, the world feels a little bit heavier today, but I'm okay and I'm here for you. Like I've done my
Yeah.
self-care, this time is for you. You don't have to take care of me. I have my own therapist. I have friends. I have like, I think to just be transparent about that with the ones that ask. I never lead with it, but I do have
Yeah.
some that call it out of like, you don't seem okay today. And I never really go into detail about what it is, but
Hmm.
I'm more just like, yeah, today feels a little heavier
Hmm.
than, last time I saw you. And
Yeah.
just being honest, because I feel like that shows a level of vulnerability that I believe goes into rapport, but also I do follow that up with like, but I don't need, I got it. Like
Yeah.
it is heavy, but I'm dealing with it. And,
Yes.
I'm here for you. And
Right.
that, but that's sometimes like a fine line of,
Very.
I don't know. I have had some that like try to flip it and I'm like, no, no.
Yeah.
you're not the therapist in this situation, I am,
Yep,
and,
yep.
like, that's not a power flex, it's just, like, you're not paying to come in here to take care of me,
Correct.
and, like,
Yes.
and I don't want or need that.
Yeah,
Um,
I have someone I have
yeah,
people. I have my own crop of
mhm,
team members that
yeah,
can help me with that. Thank you for being a good human, though.
mhm. But I mean, also, I think it comes, and I don't know if you experience this, but like I do run in very similar intersections to a good number of my clients. And so on some level, they know that like I'm dealing with some of the same things that they are, and it's like I do appreciate that they check in, but I do have to draw like a hard boundary of like, this is not my space,
Yeah.
which leads into maybe my do and don't.
Yeah, let's hear it. What are your
Um,
do's and don'ts in relation to this topic?
so I mean, my do would be to have a daily gratitude practice. And I think I love the word practice there because I talk about this a lot
Mhm.
with anybody that'll listen to me talk about it is like practice kind of if you've ever tried to learn how to do something, whether you played sports, whether you tried to learn an instrument, whether you were in choir, drama, theater, forensics, like it doesn't matter. Like if you had to practice at something, that like some days it went well and you felt really good about it, and then some days just sucked
Yep.
and you had to make the decision to show up again. And so, like with all things gratitude, mindfulness, I love the thought of calling it a practice because that alleviates the perfection of like, maybe you just didn't find a mindful moment that day, or maybe you didn't take the time or find the time to sit down and do your gratitude practice.
Mhm.
But the other thing about practice is like that you're willing to show up the next day and try again on the days where it doesn't go well or it did go well. It's like we build on it. But just kinda naming one thing, I talked about this a little bit earlier, like naming one thing every day that brought you joy or that you feel that like it went well, especially, maybe trying to pick apart like those things where you were kind of the cause of it, like whether you did something for yourself, or someone else and things like that. And then my don't would be like to isolate yourself. It's really, really easy to get like overwhelmed and, to want to kind of withdraw to keep ourselves safe, especially if you have any amount of like trauma or history where like you kind of feel like you could only rely on but reaching out for connection if you feel like you need it. I do a lot of challenging of like, you're not a burden.
Mm.
Like your friends love you. It's okay to like let them know that you're maybe not having a great day.
Yeah.
But I think that's a reciprocal street too of like if you do notice somebody that's kind of pulling back of like checking on them. But like we're gonna get through this by leaning on each other and togetherness.
Yeah.
And so like it's okay to like kind of step back from your social media and stuff and take some time. But when I say don't isolate yourself, that's kind of like an extended period of time where you're not really interacting with anyone.
Yeah.
So
Gotta check in with yourself, but also check in on your people.
mhm,
Watch for those patterns that feel is especially out of the ordinary in terms of how much a person's turning inward, and make sure that, that they're coming up for air, and that maybe you're one of the reasons they continue to come up for air.
mhm,
Um, Great. Those are great. So my do and don't. My do is control what media you consume and how often you consume it. I think and that's everything. That's the super fun stuff. That's news. That's podcasts. That's reading. I think it's important to find healthy escape. I'm all about a great escape. And also, we can't completely neglect our reality because we do need to have some ability to stay informed. So if that means asking your friends how do they get their news, and if there are either podcasts or email newsletters that you want to sign up for, or two, you can do even basic Google searches on different types of ways to get your news in a way
mhm,
that maybe if you want to stay involved but at a much more limited or carefully curated basis, you can absolutely do that. And then also my don't is to don't hesitate to talk to your therapist about how global and national affairs
mhm,
are impacting your immediate life. We we are feeling it too. We want to talk about that sometimes, and and sometimes it will be a very natural connecting point where a client will bring it up, and then other times it will be from us going, "Hey, I saw this headline and it made me think of something in your predicament. What do you think
Mhm,
about that?" And sometimes people won't know, and that can be
mhm.
a real great place of, "Well, hey, here's a way to find out more about it," and then maybe also talk about and process there what those feelings are. But also, I think it's just important to know that, especially with our clients that come from places where maybe massively important parts of their identity are not welcomed or supported or are in danger, we like to have a place in our therapy spaces where any and all topic is always on the table if they have interest in it. And that I think is such an important thing for every person to know, that is your therapist wants to talk about what you want to talk about the most.
And I think that ties into something that I've experienced as a therapist. I've had clients do this, both in my private practice and when I did community school-based,
Hmm.
is if there is a, like, global national issue that is important to you and you need to know if it's important to your therapist, ask them.
Yeah.
Like, it was a little bit trickier in school-based because it was kinda like they were stuck with me. But, like, that's part of that rapport building and that sense of safety, and if, like, you and I are not aligned on an issue, you may hesitate to actually share your true, like, issues and thoughts and feelings with me, and if that's the case, then I'll help you find someone that does more
Yeah.
align with you, because, again, like, your therapist should kinda be aligned in a way that makes you feel comfortable and safe, and you have every right to ask them those questions of, like, where they align politically, how they feel about certain issues, and, if those things don't line up,
Hmm.
there are therapists out there that they will, and you deserve
Absolutely.
to have that space, but we don't know that you have those if you don't ask. And also, I welcome it. Like,
100%.
I say in every first sometimes every 1 to 2, like, first and second sessions, I do, like, a check-in to make sure that they feel like things are vibing. Because if you're not comfortable, then you're not gonna actually do the work, and
Right.
that's what's ultimately more important to me.
Yeah.
And so, like, ask them about the hard topics and see what they have to say.
Yeah. Do it. We like hard topics. We're here for it. I mean, that's part of why we got into this work is we like
Mhm.
talking about hard things. So, all right. Well, we're now at the secret question portion of the episode.
Dun, dun,
Asher,
dun.
what did you come up with?
So, I wanna know what's one thing that you've been proud of yourself for lately, personally or professionally?
Hmm. I have been proud of myself for regularly turning to journaling again,
Mhm,
especially when I'm having bigger emotional moments. In the past, I think I would have allowed those feelings to really feel really strong. And then before I'd really process them out, maybe I wouldn't have a chance to talk to my therapist about it, or maybe I wasn't sure about talking about it. Sometimes I can question the what I perceive as the legitimacy of what I'm feeling,
mhm,
and I have been using an app that actually helps with journaling prompts and does utilize, shocker, some AI in being able to follow up on those questions. And it's been really helpful to think about my feelings in a way that I don't know. It feels like I get to organize them and consolidate them, and then I keep moving. I just keep moving
mhm,
because my thoughts aren't getting stuck in shame or feeling like they're not reasonable or whatever. And I think that's what the power of journaling has always been to me, and what I wanted to be for clients that choose to pursue it is it really is a place where there isn't something that's going to judge you for your feelings. If anything, it's just about let's expand them and make sense of them and hopefully get to a better place because of having done so. So
mhm.
I'm really proud of that.
I love that.
Yeah.
I
What
mean,
about
you hit
you? I
on
want you.
something that's, like,
Yeah.
something that I deal with in my own life, but I talk about it a lot, like, with friends and clients of,
Hmm.
like, what I heard you say just then was, like, kinda just letting your feelings be, and, like,
Yeah.
we assign, like, moral value to them of, like, "Oh, this is a good feeling or this is a bad feeling. This is okay, this is not okay," and just letting it be.
Yeah.
I think for me, it was kinda taking that plunge to transition therapists. Like, I'd been with my
Mm,
previous one for, like, 7 or 8 years, and we had done amazing work, but I kind of felt like I'd hit a spot where I was just talking
yeah.
about kind of like in a circle, and to realize that, like, maybe a therapist that practices a different modality would be, but there was, like, some grief associated with that, and, like, I kind of grappled with it, and, of course, was anxious to tell her, like, to go in and do that, like, final session and for us to talk about it, but, of course, she was amazing and supportive because that's who she is, and,
Yeah.
like, but, I mean, that was a pretty big, like, transition for me because I don't know, it's like she's been there through a lot of different life things for me and to
Mhm.
now, like, and I know she's there because, like, with your therapist, you can always go back, but to kinda take that step for me to actually do some, like, deeper healing work that I think
Yeah.
will be beneficial personally and professionally. Yeah, that transition and just finally taking the plunge.
Yeah, that's super
So,
brave and awesome of you to share with all of us. And,
yeah.
I'm sure you're the old original therapist and
Former.
former therapist and your present therapist. They appreciate your initiative and taking care of yourself. I think that's the number one thing.
Always.
No matter what, we want our clients to take care of themselves, however that looks, whether it's with us or without us. So,
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
and I think even me, I was like, "Oh, she's gonna take it personally," even though I knew she wasn't.
right.
And even
Yeah.
though, like, I always try to tell my clients, like, it's not personal. Like, sometimes
Oh,
things just end, like, for whatever reason. But it was like there's this, like, "Oh, I'm breaking up with her." And, like,
yeah.
but she is more than happy for me and, excited and hopeful, so
Yeah.
but yeah, it's been an interesting transition. So
Yeah. Good deal. All right. Well, how about shout outs? Do you have any shout outs for us?
I mean, I think my shout out would just be to the other 5 members of the collective. Like, we kinda took some time, just the 6 of us, so it was really intentional and, we worked a little bit, we played a little bit, and we mostly just, like, enjoyed each other and
Hmm.
ate a bunch of really good food, and and, like, kind of that and that sense of community is something that I had always searched for professionally and
Hmm.
feel really, really grateful to have found.
Yeah.
And so I think it would be that for me
Yeah.
and how we were just able to exist and, like, there wasn't any pressure to, like, do or be any certain thing.
Yeah. Just show up.
Yep.
I
What
like
about
that
you?
too. Yeah. I would say my shout out, which it's definitely not, I mean, I shouted out because I thought so good. I watched the new film, A House of Dynamite on
Okay.
Netflix.
I think I saw it. I haven't watched it yet.
Oh, yeah, so it's directed by Catherine Bigelow, who she directed The Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30, so really gets into these, really nitty-gritty, intense situations, and basically the movie, as this is what the premise is on IMDb, this is what it says: "When a single unattributed missile is launched at the United States, a race begins to determine who is responsible and how to respond." And I will say this, it is deeply unsettling. It gave me massive anxiety. I literally had to
Right.
turn it off a little more into an hour into it because I was having so much anxiety. I thought I was gonna have a panic attack. I'm telling you, it was so good.
I can't
That's
wait.
just
Those are kind of my favorite things, which feels counterintuitive as a therapist,
correct.
but I'm just
Same.
like trigger all of my things.
It really, I mean,
Like,
it's just so intense and it comes from so many different angles and it just it really talks about, I think, how deeply unknown so many of our processes are when it comes
mhm.
to major global events and how fast the beginning to the end of something happens and all the people involved in it. And so I just would have to say, if you're into anything that's sort of like what would happen if dot dot dot, and it's a like one of the worst case scenarios in the world. if you're into that kind of thing, this is your movie.
Nice.
It's called House of Dynamite, and again,
Okay.
and has just a really big cast of all kinds of different actors in it in
Mhm.
different roles, and yeah, I don't know. It's one of those I think will sit with me for a long time in terms of like, holy shit, that's really terrifying, and also how incredibly executed the whole thing was, but
Yeah.
also just unsettling. I cannot stop saying the word unsettling. So,
Yeah.
anyway,
I mean, I felt that way, like, I know there's 8 episodes and that Jason has told me to keep going, but, like, I'm stuck at episode I think I've watched 3 of Wayward, and I've had
oh,
so many people tell me it's good, but, like, episode 3 kinda fucked me up, and I was
um,
like I finished it, and then I just turned it off. And I haven't really been able to get myself to go back to it even though people are like, "No, it gets really good." And I'm like, "It's already really good, but, like, that was a lot."
yeah,
I haven't had that visceral of a reaction to, like, a collection of scenes in a show or a movie in a really, really long time, and I was just
shit,
like, "Nope, I'm out." Like, where's Ted Lasso? Where's a cartoon? Where's where's something that's just gonna,
yeah,
like, wrap me in a sweet, cozy blanket? And,
yeah.
like so
And you have to know what mood you're in for. Like, I think, yeah, Netflix right now has been doing a bunch of different projects that have been
Mhm.
really interesting and pretty good. I think that you never know with Netflix. I feel like the
Yeah.
quality can wax and wane. And like, I do think at this time of year, they're putting out more stuff that is hopefully of higher fare. But yeah, I have plans to watch that too. So I'll let you know if I also get to episode 3 and how I feel about it.
So
And yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But
we'll just have to talk about it in the future.
there you go. There you go. All right, y'all. Well, we are at the end of today's episode. And Ashley, I appreciate you wanting to talk about this because I have been doing this for, gosh, I always am like a little hazy on this, but 16, 17 years, I think. I always lose
Mhm.
count. And this has definitely been one of the hardest years of doing this work because of how intense everything around the work feels on top of the work itself
Mhm.
and how those are influencing both my life, but also most importantly, my clients' lives. So
Mhm.
I think it's incredibly relevant and I'm appreciative that you wanted to bring it to the forefront.
Yeah. Thank you for talking to me about it because I mean, I am relatively new to this space, especially compared to everybody else in the office. And it's like if I'm feeling it, I know y'all have got to be feeling it.
Hmm.
But I think that it also like y'all have that history that can kind of help me be like, it may suck for a while, but it will
Hmm.
be okay.
Yeah.
Like, because y'all have kind of been through so many other things that I haven't had to navigate in this space yet. And so I'm always appreciative of that.
Right back at you. All right. Well, again, we appreciate all of you out there listening. If you have any thoughts that you would like to share with us, please go to our Instagram at Bentonville Counseling or our TikTok at Collect Your Thoughts and or our YouTube page, which is also at Collect Your Thoughts. We hope that you most certainly take a little time to take a deep breath and
Collect your thoughts.
that's right. We thank you guys so much for your time and we hope you take care.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank you. Bye.